everyone, my name is Anna. Welcome to Akashic Awakening. Today I wanted to get into the topic of learning how to trust our psychic abilities and just demystifying the whole topic to make it easier for us to understand and work with. And the biggest thing is learning to differentiate ego versus intuition when we're receiving information. So the ego is a very loud and forward voice. It's very used to operating within the hustle and bustle of life. And normally the first voice we hear in our head in a situation is the ego. So if we see someone, oftentimes the first voice we hear is the ego voice. And as you go through your spiritual awakening and you start to cultivate more of an inner awareness and a more loving and compassionate awareness, the intuition and your highest self and that loving, compassionate voice will begin to be your dominant primary voice that comes out when you interact with someone. And that is the goal, to have that loving essence be your forward and your primary essence. But it could happen to any of us, and especially earlier on in our spiritual awakening, the ego is often the first voice we hear. Like maybe a judgment about a person, or a fear about a place we're at trying to assess where we are, our safety, how we relate to the others in the space. And the ego really comes down to survival. It's analyzing your surroundings. Who are you in this situation? Who are they in this situation? Where are you? How safe is this surrounding? What is the story behind this situation? So on and so forth. And it normally comes from more of a survival base. So any type of judgment about a person is normally from an ego perspective. And so shifting, now that you have that awareness of, your ego and your external surroundings, you can start to understand that it operates the same way internally. So personal judgments of self, thoughts about survival, who you are, how you fit into things, if you're good enough, if you're not good enough, so on and so forth. The inner judgmental voice is the ego voice because it's an over-analytical concept. I don't want to call it a mind, but it's an over-analytical function within our mind. And the intuition is a very subtle and gentle voice because that's part of our highest essence. And so when we are cultivating psychic awareness and a relationship with our intuition, we want to do so in a meditational space where it's calm, quiet, we can get ourselves into a centered state. And in that quietness, we can allow space for that subtle intuition voice to come through. And as we're in this state, you might have the ego come through and try to say something, like if you're trying to answer a question, like, am I capable of doing what I want to do? You might have the ego come in, like swoop in very quickly, very loudly and say, no, you can't, you're not good enough, you can't do it. Push it aside. That's not the intuition. That's not the intuitive voice. Keep pushing aside those thoughts and allow the feelings of your true intuition to come through. And normally it's a very subtle and calming and peaceful energy. Obviously, we're not always working with the happiest topics. I don't recommend diving into darker subjects and trying to get intuitive hits on them, like topics of death, more negative subjects, so on and so forth. It's best to not dive into those topics with our intuition, especially in the beginning. Because the intuition is a very loving and calm energy. And if we don't have a strong cultivated awareness with our intuition, when we ask those heavy-hitting questions and topics, we're probably only going to get ego answers. And that can just drive us more into a fear state and so on and so forth. So avoid any dark or heavy-hitting questions when you're beginning to cultivate your psychic awareness and your relationship with your intuition, just so you can be certain that it's your actual intuitive voice coming through and not your ego. Because the ego's answers will often leave you feeling insufficient, more afraid, more unstable. The intuition's answers will leave you feeling calmer, more peaceful, more loving. And eventually, as you get a greater relationship with this, you can dive into those more heavy-hitting questions because you're able to maintain that vibration of peace and love and open yourself up to an actual and true answer. Because if you start to resonate with the fear of a question, then you will create the space for the ego to come back through and answer it for you. And the ego's answers aren't real. They aren't real, so it's no point in wasting time listening to it. So in the quiet space that you create through a meditational experience, you allow feelings, subtle feelings, to come through. I'm going to be posting another video on the different types of psychic abilities, so I will link that at the end of this video. But it can come through in different ways. The intuition can come through in different ways. It could be a feeling. Like, let's say you're worried about something. You're worried about how something's going to play through. If you're asking for an intuitive answer on how it's going to come through and you start to feel very calm and relaxed, you might want to push for an answer beyond that. Like, okay, this feels nice, so I'm getting the feeling that it's going to work out well, and this is how I'm going to be feeling at the end of it. But I want a little bit more clarity. Like, can you just assure me? Can you promise me that it's going to work out? And that's the ego. That's slipping back into the ego. So it's just cultivating an awareness of the two odds playing at each other and taking it as it is. If you're just getting a feeling of calmness, detach from the need for specifics. Detach for the need for assurance and promises, because those honestly don't exist. Trust and faith is what's necessary. Absolutes are never certain. Promises are never made. And so trust and faith are necessary to build the path to your highest self and to your highest good. And so you might get just a feeling of calmness and peace. You might have your ears ring. You might have answers that come through as thoughts. So one thing is that intuitive voices often come through in your own voice. So it might sound just like your inner dialogue, except it's flowing effortlessly. And you're not putting any effort into the thoughts that are arising in your mind. That it's that calm, peaceful, loving, compassionate energy that comes with the intuitive voice. So you might just get a few words, like all will be well. You might get a few words like you will see in time, so on and so forth. But it's going to, in most cases, sound like your own inner voice, just in a very calm and peaceful manner. Sometimes you might see things, you might just see a color, like red, or maybe that color has a meaning to you, or maybe it's relating to a chakra, or a chakra's energy. It could be, you might get a glimpse of a vision, like you might start to envision yourself at the completion of this topic that you're asking about, and seeing yourself smiling, or seeing yourself happy, or seeing yourself with the solution you want. You really need to be open to whatever information is coming through and however it's coming through, and release the attachment to outcomes. Because if you're very held up on what you want to come through, the ego will provide that for you. And you want to make sure that you're receiving actual intuition and not just feeding your own lies, essentially, or fueling your own delusions. So you want to be able to detach, have a level of trust and faith in what's going on around you, so that you can open yourself up to what you're really meant to hear and receive at this time. So one other thing is the ego is the voice of survival, and the intuition is the voice of creation. So also assess the answers on how they're coming through on that topic as well. Is it building towards something, or is it taking away from something? Does it sound like your day-to-day thoughts, or is this a new voice that's coming through, a new insight? And how do you feel when you receive it? If you are feeling calmer and more peaceful and more assured, regardless of what information came through or how, if any, if you're feeling calmer and more assured, that's the intuitive voice that's coming through. So I hope that helps. Like I said, there will be another video published about the different types of psychic abilities and how to work with them, and demystifying that topic as well. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have an amazing day, and take care.